On today's episode, I'll apply this peel and stick wood veneer to the plastic top of this coffee table. And I'll refinish the bottom. This is a pretty typical mid-century coffee table. It's not a high-end piece, but it's also not junk. It's pretty solid. The top is a plastic laminate. The legs and the apron are all bolted together, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that, and actually makes it a lot easier to refinish. So even though the top of the top is plastic laminate, on the bottom it does have some solid wood pieces going around the edges. That's kind of nice. And my plan is to put some real wood veneer on the top over the plastic laminate. I don't like the way it looks. It's just really pale. I'm going to start by disassembling it as much as I can. Okay, I'm going to try scraping this off first, and hopefully that works. Okay, that was pretty easy. I'd say about 90% of the finish is off, but you can see that's kind of blotchy. There's still a little bit on there. So I'm just going to sand the rest of it off until it's a nice consistent color. This is solid wood. This isn't veneered, so I don't have to worry about sanding through veneer. Okay, so that was, I don't know, less than a minute of sanding, and it looks like it's already looking good. So let's wet it down a little bit so we can see the true color and see how it looks. And that was 120 grit sandpaper. Yeah, it looks good. It's pretty much even now as far as the color. It's not blotchy. It is a little bit darker here, but I think that's just natural darkness in the wood. So I'm going to do all the rest of the pieces just like this. The legs I'll sand by hand. I don't want to use the power sander on here because I don't want to flatten the curves. Before I apply the new veneer, I want to sand with 80 grit sandpaper the surface of the table just to get rid of the gloss. So I noticed as I was sanding this that there's a bit of a dip in the middle. If I put this straight edge on here, you can see how large the gap is. Can't quite get my finger through, but almost. So I don't think that'll be a problem for the veneer. We'll see. I'll just make sure I get it pressed down really firmly into the dip. So the veneer that I'm using for the top of the coffee table is this walnut peel and stick veneer. I think the actual name for it is PSA, pressure sensitive adhesive. And it's just got a film on the back that you peel off and then stick it on. And it works really great. I've used it lots of times and I think it's perfect for a small flat surface like the top of this coffee table. So I cut it a little oversized and then I'll just trim the excess later after I get it on. Okay, and then I'm going to take this piece of wood with a curved edge on it and make sure it's pressed down firmly. And be careful not to go over the edge with this or you could break the veneer. Next, I have to trim the excess veneer from the top. And I already did most of it with a utility knife blade, but the rest of it I'm going to get with this router bit. And it's a flush trim bit, so it has a bearing on it that will ride along the edge of the table. And then there's just a tiny bit of the blade sticking out, and that will trim the veneer flush with the tabletop. So sometimes after the edge is trimmed, I'll see a little bit of the adhesive sticking out. It's kind of like a gummy substance that looks a little messy. So I'm just going to take this scraper blade and clean that up with this. This piece is missing a little corner here, so to fix that, I'm going to use some epoxy putty. I think this might be cured already. Actually, I'm not sure if this epoxy putty is good anymore. It feels pretty hard. But the way it's supposed to work is you mix the two parts together. There's two parts in there. And then you have, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes to work it. And then you let it dry and it gets nice and hard, and then you can sand it. So not sure if this is going to work, but I'll give it a shot. Helps to wet your finger a little bit, and that helps to shape it. I'm just rough shaping it now, and I'll clean it up later after it's dried. Looks pretty good. Well, I had to come inside because it's time to apply the water-based dye stain. And it's too cold outside for that. It's below freezing and I don't want this to freeze. So here we are in the basement. And I've got the apron pieces here. And as you can see, the apron is a different color than the walnut veneer on the top. And the legs are also a different color. I don't have them here, but and I like to have the whole piece usually kind of a uniform color as opposed to high contrast look. So I'm gonna try this dye stain over everything to try to get it kind of a cohesive color. And I made this just by putting some of this dye into water. And this particular jar is actually a combination of some different stains that I had mixed a while ago, and I had them left over, so I just poured them all into the jar. So it's kind of a grab bag of stain, and I'm not really sure how it's going to look. I have a general idea that I think it should look pretty good, but I don't know. Give it a try and take it from there. And I did apply water to all the pieces first and let it dry, and then sanded it smooth with 180 grit sandpaper. So that way, hopefully when I apply the water-based stain, it won't raise the grain and make it fuzzy, because I already did it with just plain water. So I've got the stain on all the parts, and you can kind of see how the apron is still a lot lighter than the top. The top is kind of more brown. So I think for the apron, I'm going to put some antique walnut gel stain on it, which is pretty brown, and see if I can get it closer to this color. So the color from the gel stain is good, but I feel like now maybe it's a little too dark. So I'm just going to take some mineral spirits on paper towel and just give it a quick wipe, and that'll take off some of the gel stain because the gel stain is not dry yet. So it'll take some off and it'll leave some on there. Okay, I'm back outside in the cold, and I came out here because I decided to use shellac for at least most of the finish on the table. And I want to spray the first coat on the top. And I can't spray inside, so I came out here. And it's really, really cold, and it's not ideal conditions to spray anything, but I've done it before and it works. And the reason I'm spraying on the top is because I don't want to apply it by hand, because I don't want to end up pulling up any of the dye stain that I applied that might be sitting on top of the wood. So I just need to spray a few coats at first. And then once those coats are on there, that'll seal in the stain, and then I can take it inside and apply the rest by hand. And on the apron and the legs, I'm just doing that all by hand because I already applied that gel stain over the dye stain, and the gel stain is not going to come off as long as it's completely dry. So I'll just spray a few coats and go inside. And I should point out that this is clear shellac I'm spraying on here. And now I can just wipe on the rest of the shellac. So now the whole thing has finish on it, and I did do just shellac except for on the top. After the shellac I added about 2 or 3 thin coats of wipe-on polyurethane, just for some extra protection from spilled drinks and things like that. So now I just want to buff out the whole thing with some wool lube and some fine steel wool. And then I can put it all back together. I think it might be a little too cold out here for the wool lube. It's only 1 degree above zero here. It's turning white. I don't know if it's maybe freezing. I shouldn't do that. So I'm gonna bring this inside. Okay, I'm back inside. I'm just gonna warm this up with a hair dryer. So this is when I usually take the piece outside and get some shots of it all finished. But it's really cold out there, it's below zero, and I am going to go out there and get some shots of it. But first, I noticed that the lighting in here is actually very flattering to the top of the coffee table at the moment. This light just as it is right now. So the veneer has some really nice figuring in it, and it really pops in the right kind of light. So before I go outside, I just wanted to show the top in here because the light out there is probably not going to be as flattering to the top So then you might ask, why not just shoot the whole thing in here? And it's mostly because I don't have the room. I can't really get around it like I can outside. So here it is. It's some nice figure in that veneer. And here it is, all finished. Thanks for watching.